Welcome to the Even Better podcast, where your host, Sinica Waugh of Your Clear Next Step, brings you exciting content about making communities better by helping people get even better at work.
Hi, it's Haley from Your Clear Next Step. Did you know our mission is to help people have better workdays so that together they can co-create better communities? We do this by helping people make authentic human connections, deliver real business value, and treat change as a process, not an event. We have several upcoming classes that you won't want to miss. Sign up today at yourclearnextstep.com/events.
Well, hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us on yet another edition of the Even Better podcast. This is Sinica Waugh, and I'm so delighted to welcome you today and to welcome our guest, Jenna Adams Valadez. Jenna, thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for asking.
Jenna, this is a delight. So, for those of you who do not know Jenna, I only know Jenna a little, but I was so enamored when I heard Jenna speak and saw her speak and met her for the first time at the Iowa Lean Consortium conference this recent year. Where time gets away from me now, so I don't remember how many months ago it's been, but we were in the same room at the same time, and I immediately recognized a kindred spirit in Jenna and had a chance to investigate just a little bit further and discovered that I was indeed right about the things that I thought I was seeing in Jenna. As I watched her up on the platform, I watched her up in front of this room in a captive session here, in a breakout session where she had drawn a really, really great audience around her. The room was full to overflowing. And the tech was doing what tech can sometimes do in those moments. And Jenna was responding in the room. She was doing her thing regardless of what tech was doing. And she was engaging the audience. She did not lose a single member of the room. We were all still fully engaged. She was getting her point across, and she was teaching us. In that moment, you were doing what the session was calling us to do, which was using AI, using tech in the moment to make things better. And I don't remember the exact point of the session, and you'll remember it far better than I was. But what was so captivating, Jenna, in that moment is that you had committed at the beginning of the session was that in this quick session, you were going to use a tool, demonstrate how to use the tool to make workdays better. And you made days better for all of us in that room. And you weren't flustered, and you smiled and you laughed through it. You engaged through it. And we walked away going, hey, this woman just made our day better. And it was phenomenal. And I was enthralled.
I appreciate it. And that's all that I can hope to do. You know, it's funny. I used to dance, do folk dancing and things like that. And the biggest first lesson you get is don't show the audience if you get scared that you miss something. Don't be scared. The minute you're scared or uncomfortable, the audience is, because they're empathizing with you in that moment. They're engaging with you. So I just committed to that. I'm like, I know things are probably going to go wrong, so let's just enjoy it together and focus on the point. So I'm glad that came across, because technology did not need to prove me that right that day.
And I think it was part of your point is that technology is a mystery, and it sometimes does things of its own volition. And we're here not at its mercy, but we're here to survive and to thrive in spite of technology. And you did.
Thank you.
Ah, wonderful. So, Jenna, you are a Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt and a certified continuous improvement consultant. You're based out of Omaha. You hung out with us here in Iowa, and I'm so delighted. I know that you have a lot of CI experience. I know you've got a couple of decades of coaching and mentoring experience in transportation, in IT, in academia, in nonprofit sectors. I know that you are a woman business owner. I know that you help people, you work on emerging technology and how that can help improve specific operations. I know that you put people first and you use technology to help put people first. And I find that really, really remarkable and really wonderful. Tell me what I haven't said that others should know about you before we get started on today's session.
You know, honestly, that's the great part. I mean, all of that is well said, and I appreciate you highlighting that, because I hope people, you know, the conversation we're going to talk about today with neurodiversity in the workplace, it's said from a place of experience. It's said from a place of wanting to help others perform to their best of abilities, because I think people want to go to work and do a good job, and just sometimes we need to tweak how that workplace is so they can do that good job and be proud of the work that they do. And that, there might be different ways of doing that. And some people may not agree with everything that I say today, but that's okay. I think the types of conversation that will hopefully come from this will just help drive improvement, whatever form it needs to take.
Lovely, lovely. So, as we think about the listeners who would be listening today, and our audience includes people who go to a variety of different day jobs. There are folks in corporate, there are folks in small businesses, there are folks in a variety of different jobs, leaders, individual contributors, people who are making their days better, because this is the Even Better podcast, right? And so, our mission is to help people have better work days so that we can co-create better communities. So as you think about the topic here, we're going to talk about folks, tools and tips, ways that we can help neurodivergent individuals thrive at work is part of the topic today. Who is our audience today, and how do we want to frame up the conversation? Who should be listening, and with what ears would you encourage people to listen?
I would definitely say all leaders, because I had a wonderful experience where one of the monthly huddles I'm at has moved to Outlook, Nebraska, which is an organization and a nonprofit where they manufacture, but they provide skills to the visually impaired.
Mm.
And we were talking about visual management as a tool. And the CEO, who is not visually impaired, said, "Why is it called visual management? Isn't it just good management that you set up systems personalized to people that they can come in and understand exactly where they're at, what they need to be do, and how and where they need to start?" And that got me thinking about when we talk about supporting neurodiversity in the workplace and the different ways people can function, it's not singling out one group, it's just good management. So if you're making an environment, not only for yourself, who may or may not be neurodivergent, trying to function in a very defined box of what a good quote unquote workplace is, it's not making exceptions or unique situations or changing the world. We're just going to be doing good management. So I think if you're a leader who's maybe been head down just trying to accomplish priorities, or if you're a worker who's been firefighting and felt overwhelmed, whether you're neurodivergent or not, and maybe this will hopefully encourage you to take a step back and look at the design of the environment in which you're trying to perform. Because ideally, we're creating environments that people can thrive in, work well, understand what they need to do, understand what even good is. And no matter if you can thrive in it and it's fine, or maybe could always be better, we're using this opportunity to really reevaluate that design and condition of our space.
Fantastic. And could it be extended also not just to leaders, but to anyone who has the ability to influence the environment that they're in?
Absolutely. I would say so, because I think a lot of us more than ever are working on the phone, especially if you are working or over Zoom, or, whether it's working with a client who you have to explain why something is late, or working with a vendor who you're trying to help them understand why certain deadlines have to be met and what you're seeing from your side, taking the time to design these spaces that can adapt, and processes that can adapt to the different types of people that you're working with, can create more success, I think.
Indeed. Let's talk a little bit about why. Why does this matter? Why does this matter to you? Why should this matter to any of us? What's the why behind this topic, Jenna?
Well, neurodiversity in that term is pretty broad. I mean, this covers ADHD. This could be autism spectrum, this could be dyslexia, Tourette's, OCD, anxiety, PTSD, brain trauma, like all of these different things impact how people function in a space, network, and with other people. And anywhere from 15 to 20% of the population has this. And, there's been a lot of studies that have shown that the more diverse the people's experiences and the voices that you have in a space, the more creative, the more innovative, the more competitive you are compared to individuals who are focused on only one way of doing things and only one way of thinking about things. And so it just really broadens your toolbox to accomplish the goals that you want, maybe in ways you could have never thought of without these alternative ways of viewing things. I mean, think about a product that impacts women, such as high heel shoes. And, you can bring a man in to talk about these shoes and he never wears them every day, but you have now a woman who might come in, whether she chooses to wear them or not, but maybe that's the person who uses it the most. Wouldn't it make sense to have their input to think about how could we do this differently? How can we be more comfortable? What about this scenario? Hard floors versus soft floors, and that's just a very simple example, but I think it applies to a lot of the value that comes with the diversity of voices. So if you're a leader and you want to set up a space where people can really be innovative and strategic and think about new ways to solve the problems you're facing, to have that competitive edge at the speed of which technology is going, and supporting the people, which, yes, it is a stereotype, but there's a lot of studies that show, from creative thinking to pattern recognition to new ways of creating precise processes. A lot of the neurodivergent folks, no matter what type of diagnosis there is, tend to be really good at these types of tasks.
Mm-hmm. That's so interesting. And as we start to look at the idea, I think that word neurodivergent has been soft entered into our conversation for a few years now, right? It's been tossed around. People have used it, and they used it sort of gently or tenderly in some places, like lobbed it out carefully into some spaces. And then some people had sort of a reaction to neurodivergent. I don't know. I can't talk about that, or that's a thing we don't say here, or that we only use that word in some places. And maybe in some places it was more judgy, or in some places it's not a thing we talk about, or but are there still stigmas associated with the word neurodivergent? Are we like, where are we at in this, Jenna?
I think honestly, it depends on where you're at. And unfortunately, I think we're in a worse place than where we
Mm,
were 18 months ago, even 12 months ago. And the reason is you can be neurodivergent without a diagnosis.
okay.
But if you're going to get accommodations, you have to have a diagnosis.
Okay.
And getting a diagnosis to discuss a quote unquote disability can create stigma. If you're in an at-will state, it may make sense to choose to declare that disability if you have a formal diagnosis, the way it's defined these days. But at the same time, you may be afraid to do that because you don't want to be trapped in a box. And neurodivergent, without having to go out and maybe get a diagnosis that may be used against you, was a way to kind of try and test the waters, I think, of conversations in your workplace to see how safe it was for you to have maybe more conversations about accommodation. And I say that from personal experience. I was diagnosed with ADHD at 28. I had done very well book wise my whole life, but grief and the loss of a parent caused my symptoms to just spiral out. And so I got help and assistance in a diagnosis, but what that meant for workplace and whether or not I could talk about that was incredibly different because that's not real. Oh, people just want to say neurodivergence so that they can stand out and be unique. There's a lot of assumptions for if you do not know people who are genuinely trying to work and navigate their own unique ways of working in a corporate environment, especially, you really have to wait and test and see, is this a safe place or it's not? And I think a lot of people, especially with concerns about what is DEI, is it valid? Why should we care? It has made it less safe for a lot of individuals that I know to try and have conversations and even ask for accommodations. So now think about it. You have people who have maybe a different set of skills and a different set of communicating, but they can do a very good job if they're in a space that, maybe they just happen to need noise canceling headphones because you're in an open air environment. And studies have recently shown that that's not been an effective way of setting up an office for anybody.
No.
Or let's say, as someone with ADHD, you need to stand up once an hour and just move around for 5 minutes. So you take a lap around the break room and then come back. But that's a culture in which if you do that, you're judged because you're not head down at your laptop. So you start purposely not asking for accommodations because you don't want to stand out, but now you're not working as well. And everyone just gets more frustrated because as that exhaustion from trying to mask, which is another important term, masking is where you unconsciously or consciously try to hide your symptoms or what might catch people's attention to look quote unquote normal or neurotypical, that's exhausting. And now instead of focusing on delivering the best product or the best output that a business is requiring of them, they're more worried about, is everyone else comfortable around me? Does everyone understand that I'm working hard?
Yeah.
Am I presenting in a way that is acceptable? Think about how much space that would leave for doing better work or more innovative work if you don't have to worry about any of those things, because you've created a psychologically safe environment for multiple types of people.
Yeah. I was just teaching last week on the concept of psychological safety and having a space where people can create, where people can take risks and they can ask questions and they can do the things that they need to do to innovate and to be themselves and to express concerns. Hey, I'm concerned that this isn't the ideal space for me, or I'm concerned that I need to step up or step out or do whatever it is that I need to do. If we're not creating psychological safety in our own teams, that erodes productivity, that erodes so much. As leaders, we would want to create that psychological safety. And so the flip side is the cost of not creating an inclusive space, the cost of not creating a space where everyone, neurotypical, neurodivergent, everyone feels safe in that space. It feels, to me, it feels so obvious that we would, of course, want to create psychological safety because but I understand that we're not all there yet. We've got work to do, one team at a time, right? One team at a time. We got work to do.
Right. And I think part of it too is it's a cultural shift, but also when you're a leader and maybe you were raised in an environment that's maybe more akin to a military environment where it's command and control. This is how we're doing it. This is the way we do it. We just got to get it done.
Mm.
Follow the instructions, get it done. I think that as long as you're honest that this is the environment that you have and this is what you expect, most people will somehow find a way to work in that environment if they need to. It's not maybe ideal for a lot of people, but at least you understand the rules. I think where this becomes especially important, and I'm sure you've seen this too, is where companies say we are an open communication environment. But then you hear when you start talking side by side with frontline workers, I can't speak up. The last person who did that lost a job.
Mm.
It's or that, we want people to feel comfortable, but the practices of the company contradict that. And whatever you're going to be as a company, whatever culture you're going to develop, I think, whatever you have to do because you've got your nuance and I'm not sitting next to you, you do, but you also, I think if you can at least be honest about what you're trying to create. So like what I ran into when I left academia, because I was pursuing a PhD in history, I had been teaching. I came from a place where it's okay to ask why, because we ask each other questions to help build each other up, to understand how a person got to a particular idea and to support them, to make it more robust, to make whatever they were trying to do even better. Why and good dialogue and exchange is a sign of support that you care enough to even ask.
Mhm.
And then I came into a corporate environment where why was seen as a threat. Even though they said they were open to discussions, why was seen as an attempt to undermine someone in front of others. And there were multiple times where I'd run into, we want these metrics, but they were literally impossible to make. Like to do it, to follow the processes that they were asking to do to achieve the numbers that they were wanting on paper was literally impossible. And so that contradiction, especially for a lot of neurodivergent people, is like, I want to do what you're asking me to do. And this unspoken, well, we know it's impossible, but just show that you're trying. That is a confusing and very uncomfortable situation to be, because then it's subjective. If you like me not making my goal is okay. If you don't like me, then now you have an excuse to fire me. And so how do you navigate that when there's supposedly firm expectations that are not followed, and these contradictions, like a lot of the especially those more on the autism spectrum who really like the grounding that firm rules and firm guidelines and clear expectations bring. The minute you violate what you say you're trying to accomplish, they want to be like, oh, I'll help you. You're missing what you say you want. So I'm here to help you and I'm bringing it up to you. They often are, your canaries in the coal mine of contradictions or maybe that there's a problem, but as the first one to speak up because you said you wanted help, now I'm being punished because
Right.
I'm making things harder for the leader.
Mm.
So it's leaders should care because one, we all need a voice to help check us.
Hmm.
And we have to set up these environments for APIs and positive intent. Not every why, if you stop and step back, is maybe an attack, but these opportunities to really reevaluate, does this make sense? And unfortunately, I think the corporate environment up to this point, especially in the Western world, it's better to gloss past to the next, the problem to the next victory versus really trying to work through that moment of reflection. And then ultimately, those who are neurodiverse, they either spend their time spinning their wheels, staying extra hours, just trying to perform to a standard so that it can't be said they didn't try because they're likely coming from a background anyway of never feeling quite adequate and trying to show that they care and trying to show that they have knowledge and not speaking up at the challenge, or that concern that I'm vulnerable and I don't want to use this job, or they're not going to say anything, and now you've missed this opportunity because they could have helped make something better, but because it wasn't safe, they just need to do the job and they're miserable because it's a constant contradiction every time they come in.
Yeah. So clear expectations. I've heard you say a couple things. Let's talk to some practical, tactical things. For sure, a why is under the surface there. Why would we want this? Inclusion. Inclusion, there's a good business case for inclusion. I think you've alluded to this. I've heard you talk about the diversity of perspective is just so important, and we've got people bringing different perspectives to the table. And I know that you and I both foundationally agree on the importance of psychological safety. But let's talk about how. So if fundamentally and foundationally we agree that leaders and those who are co-creating environments where we want spaces that are so let's back up because I think when we started the conversation, there was we started down a little bit of a rabbit hole around whether or not whether or not there's a diagnosis and whether or not there's an accommodation being made. Let's set that aside. Let's say there's not a need for that, and that I as a leader or I as an influencer of spaces can create a space, and I can say, hey, let's let's create a space that would be open and would be welcoming. Maybe I don't mean the word open. Maybe I mean the word welcoming. It would be inclusive to a neurodivergent population. What would that look like? How would I even go about that? What would I start? What do I do?
Well, this comes back to the whole idea of it's just good management and that everyone benefits from clear understanding of what is the priorities and what is the goal. And honestly, I found it was really interesting how attracted I was before I knew I got my later autism diagnosis, that the tools of leader standard work, which I think is great because it tells you what are you trying to accomplish and what are your metrics, and you have regular conversations with a leader so that they are helping you identify and remove barriers to accomplishing those things. It's like a syllabus. As a teacher, you give your students a clear syllabus. This is how you're graded. And now you know what is expected of you. And it was really confusing to me going into the corporate world because even though I had retail jobs, even retail jobs had very clear, you need to make these sales. This is your goal for the day. This is what excellence looks like. And to go into a corporate world where there were so many jobs that did not have that clarity, basically did not have a syllabus, if you think about it as an instructor and a teacher of what is good. And if you, no matter whether a person is neurodivergent or not, if you want people to be on the same page in terms of what are you trying to accomplish? Things are inevitably going to go to firefighting, no matter what. And some jobs just are built for firefighting, literally firefighters, or maybe customer service, whatever it is. there's going to be a point where people's feet are against the fire. So something like leader standard work, where I've already know what I have to do. I already know what my most critical process is and my critical output is and what I'm trying to move the marker for, so I can act with confidence. I do not second guess myself. Second guessing yourself adds time. It adds especially paralysis.
Mm,
Like, I think I'm focusing on the right thing, but I don't know. And I've been hit with 10 priorities at once. Everything is important, and then nothing is important. And I
right.
think we talk about that a lot. And if you can find those as a leader, one, two, and three most important things, I would have to push back at this idea of, well, they're all important and you need to figure it out. That never works. I don't think that has ever worked in the history of, you know, of any job, that is saying it's all important, you figure it out. Right then you're putting even neurotypical people at a disadvantage, and what their priorities are based off of their background, how they interpret your definitions, especially if there's no visual aid, whether that's the leader standard work itself or a visual management, a Kanban board, any of those things, that real-time metrics, if you're lucky enough to have something like that, to know exactly where to start when you're firefighting, it's inevitably going to lead to probably someone not doing what you thought as a leader was important, because you told them to choose and that to them in that moment made sense. Now we've got conflict, and you're talking about cost. What does this cost you? Our field is kind of hard to sometimes, I think, calculate the cost of when we don't do something. If you don't do this, yes, it's going to cost us 50 hours. We have that. But what are you talking about when you have high turnover rate? I think that is one of the most important under discussed aspects in this, is when you create an environment that people do not feel confident, they don't feel good about the work, and they don't feel like they're getting good training or guidance, they tend to leave. What is that cost of a high turnover rate? Well,
Mhm.
the Sherm Foundation, which is what a lot of HR companies depend on, have estimated anywhere from 50% of that person's salary to 200% is what it costs to replace an individual. Think about that. Now, let's say it's just the average. It's about, maybe 125%, that median, if we
Mhm.
want to say it's 125% to replace a person every time they leave. How often have we seen jobs where the people are churning every 18 months, maybe even
Right.
every 12 months?
Right.
And you think you're saving money because you're getting rid of a problem employee, because we have a problem where we blame bad processes on people. We personalize it. When lean asks you to, or Six Sigma asks you to step back and say, is the process broken? What is it about the process? Let's take the emotion out of it and look at what these things we are doing, and not the supposed moral standing, lazy or not lazy aspects of a person's character. you know that's unfortunately, I think, where most leaders jump, because they're right in front of you, versus taking advantage of that gemba, of that going and seeing, show me the process, let's
Mhm.
talk through this. And those spaces of reflection, that clarity of, the goals and what we are trying to prioritize through leader standard work, and having effective change management, which I know you're a big fan of, so
Mhm.
that when things have to change, because inevitably they're going to
Mhm.
change is a part of business. And it's so funny that neurodivergent people get the stereotype that they can't evolve, change makes them uncomfortable. Yes, but honestly, everyone is uncomfortable with change. So having these good, clear roadmaps of, now's the time to change. Is this the right change? We're not going to just assume. We're going to use the data. We're going to get the buy-in. We're going to show the metrics, and we're going to check back and reflect on all of these things. It's clarity of communication from the day to day, and those transitions, as you inevitably must change, especially with technology like AI is presenting, and bringing these things together so that your people are optimized and confident to do what you're asking them to do, instead of questioning, is this right? Is this right? Is this right? I don't know. My boss says everything I do is wrong, so I'm just going to wait till they tell me what to do. Sorry, that was a lot.
No, and it's wonderful. And I'm thinking about to your point there on change management, that if you do something intentionally, as you described it, some of these things would for sure help a neurodivergent person or persons or the neurodivergent population, and they also help neurotypical people they help the rest of us. And I was thinking about the other solutions, and for some reason, ramps is the only thing that's coming to mind. And I feel ridiculous because I know there are a bunch of others. And so, anyone listening to this, would you text me? Would you use my social media platform and send me all the other examples so the next time I share this anecdote, someone I have a bunch of others at my recall. But so you put in ramps to help wheelchair users, right? So you need a ramp to help a wheelchair user go from one level to another level in a space. And it helps a wheelchair user. And it also helps anyone who's pushing a stroller, and it helps anyone who's got a cart full of stuff that they've got to move. It helps someone using a cane. It helps someone who breaks a leg and is using crutches. We wind up, all of us, many of us wind up being helped by this particular piece of solution that may have been an accommodation for one audience, but it winds up helping all of us. There's a whole bunch of other audiobooks, Audible.
Yes.
How many of us, I mean, if we were in an auditorium right now, I'd say, raise your hand if you've listened to a book on audio, an audiobook that was designed to help one particular population, but now so many of us leverage that solution because it helps so many of us in other forms and other ways. We all benefit when we think about different processing styles as different, not better than, not less than, but different. And that different perspective brings something to the table that, in fact, is beneficial to every one of us. And like, this is a soapbox of mine, so I'm going to step back down. Sorry.
No, no, no. And I think it's a perfect soapbox because what I don't, and it goes back to this design, this is not about catering to one small group, and this is not about people, these neurodivergents being a problem. They're not the problem. It's often the design and the expectations of a workplace based generally on, it might not even be the collective, the quote unquote correct corporate way. It's just who happens to be in control of the environment at any given time,
Right.
their perspective of what right is. And it's almost, it's not a critique of those people who maybe have never been asked to think about these things. I think this is a great opportunity because I'm definitely not attacking those people. You know what you know. I mean,
Right.
we talk about all the time. How do you not know what you don't know? Like, how do you bring that forward? The person who never thought about using a ramp until they had to be in a wheelchair for a broken leg, the person who never thought it would be make sense to have a maternity nursing room for their female employees until maybe their wife came home like complaining that what an awful day, there was nothing, it's humiliating, or the wife themselves were thinking about this for the work environment. The individual who might be hard at hearing, they can still do their particular job because it's data analysis or IT, but now we're going to make flashing lights when there's a tornado so that if they're on a call or maybe have their hearing aid turned off because they're in the middle of trying to focus, and don't want to hear this open office environment, they're still going to see that there is an alarm and no one gets left behind. These are simple things that help everyone.
Right. Right. They help everyone. And I love your point there, Jenna. It's not that there is no fault and no blame for not knowing what you don't know. We all have blind spots and we can only know what we know. And so bringing others around us is a way to delight in the diversity of perspectives and the richness. We are better together. And so allowing for different perspectives and honoring and celebrating the different perspectives and leaning into those. And so if I'm a leader, if I'm an influencer of space, if I am a creator of workspaces and work habits and work culture, I'm going to want to ask the question, what are people needing who don't think like me, who don't work like me? Because they may need something that I don't need. And it turns out their way might actually help some of the weirdness that I have too. Like
Yes,
at the
yes,
end of the day, it
absolutely
may
right.
make us all so much better.
And it's a matter of like being confident enough. And this now goes to people who are either undiagnosed or maybe something that they felt like maybe they could fall under this category, but they've been trying so hard to just fit and be the right thing and not
Mm.
be weird. And they've never stepped up and asked for an accommodation. because they don't want to be singled out. They don't want to seem like they're weak. Giving yourself permission to be that better worker by asking for it, or because one, you shouldn't have to offer that history of who you are and why. You should never offer something if you do not feel safe to do so, whether it's a diagnosis or suspected diagnosis, none of that. I think it's better to talk, if you really need accommodation consulting, there's resources out there like askjan.org, or even, the EEOC guidance on neurodiversity, which is a .gov resource for the ADA. Like, look into these things, because I am not a lawyer. And every state is different and what is protected. And especially if you do not have a diagnosis, there's a lot that not be protected. But you can even be neurotypical and just need a quiet place to think, to do your work. And it should be okay to ask, to say, hey, I work better. I want to work better for you. Can I have the noise canceling headphones? Or can I be seated away from a walkway? And I know not everyone can be accommodated, but I think as leaders, we need to consider what is reasonable. If it gives me a better product, why not? And it goes, I think, to the heart of change management too, because I've taken your workshop, and it's such a great workshop because you talk about addressing the different ways in which people think. Have you heard of emergenetics in terms of a tool?
No, go ahead.
It's really interesting. I love it because not only does it look at the different quadrants in which your brain may favor how to function. So it's like analytical, conceptual, meaning like you can picture things, social, meaning can you empathize with other people's emotions? You don't have to like people, but you can understand where they're coming from. And then structural, everything is black and white, numbers, etc. I had a boss. I took this emergenetics because the corporation offered this. And it was really interesting because it talked about the different ways people processed information. I was very high conceptual, very high social. My boss, my immediate boss, had almost no conceptual. She wasn't a picturing image person. And until I took the class, I didn't understand this. So I'd go to her all the time with these ideas of improvements, and I'd get a no. I took the class, I looked at her chart and understood now that she pictured nothing. So I started taking visual aids every time I had an idea for her, either a graph or a printout or a number. Yes, every single time. So if I can get leaders to think about nothing else, that really think about what a person is trying to communicate to you and accomplish with you. Let's take API. Maybe they quirky, maybe they fidget, and I'll talk about the do nots as a leader, but look at really what they're trying to accomplish with you. And because if she had kept telling me no, we could have missed out on this great reference that told people how to measure the impact of weather on rail supply and their customers. That was improving the customer experience. They would have missed this continued client breakdown where they weren't getting served for rail cars because they didn't understand that the system was impacting when they could submit cars. The contract said they could submit their request by one time, but the system was making because it was in railroading, was making their car load and their train makeup 4 hours earlier.
Oh, wow.
Like all of these things that were impacting real thing, but because she needed visual aids and couldn't understand me, we were missing these opportunities.
Yeah.
So that's the nugget and the seed I hope will stick with not only leaders, but those who are trying to work with a peer or a coworker who's just like, I don't get you. I don't get Billy. I just don't. What am I trying to do? Like stepping back and assuming, one, I think this person genuinely maybe wants to help, but two, what is the result they're trying to work with me on can lead to those big advances. Which I'll wrap up by saying that, as you're thinking about this, one, you should never ask and never assume that someone is neurodivergent. I mean, that is their information to give. But what you can, I think, for anyone is think about how verbal only rarely works.
Yeah.
Always follow up with either like those communication, like an email or a visual aid or some type of visual management and just tools that put us on the same page. And, to not interpret the fidgeting or because you don't have to be neurodivergent. It's bad enough I'm Latina. So like I wave my hands and do everything anyway, which some people might find aggressive. And I have been told that I'm very intense. And I didn't need to be neurodivergent because let me tell you, there's a lot of people who are neurotypical and they just gesture and it's just different, you know. But like, you know, thinking about, does an open office plan really make sense? Is it just visually cool, or is it actually conducive to the environment that we need to make for people?
Mhm.
Um, and the, you know, not equating stillness with focus,
Mm,
because that is a huge thing. I was just, you know, I used to in high school, before I even knew I had a diagnosis, I would braid my hair multiple times up and down, listening to people, because just that form of fidgeting helped
mhm.
me focus because I didn't have a diagnosis. I didn't know. Like, so that was, or I would doodle notebooks and notebooks. And if you think about the people who doodled in high school, or maybe are
Mhm.
doodling in your meeting, don't assume it's just for, you know, that they're not listening, that they're being disrespectful. It's just they are trying, and that just happens to be the tool for that.
Yeah.
So, and I think the hardest one in all of this is the focus on optics and perceptions versus
Mm,
actual output. You know, Billy may get up from his desk 5 times a day, but if he's meeting and exceeding your goals that you've set as an output, then what does it matter?
right.
People can do, if they are accomplishing what you need them to accomplish, as long as they're not disrupting other people, what does it matter how they do it? And I think that's the hardest one,
Uh-huh.
because we all have these like very cultural, deeply ingrained assumptions and triggers that we're not even aware of.
Yeah. I think there are two stories, and one was two stories that I'll share on this, and one's more of a confession than anything else, and one's a bit of a celebration. But one was a moment when I was speaking in front of an audience, and it was a internal conference where a client had brought a whole bunch of people from around their organization together for a session that I was giving. And there was a member of the audience who was sitting there, and she was knitting. She was in the front row and she was knitting, and so she had her knitting needles out, and they were clicking. And I had no problem with it at all. Didn't bother me. I figured she was keeping her hands busy while she listened and engaged. And I saw her eyes following me, and she was laughing along with my jokes when I made jokes, and I felt like she was fully engaged. And afterwards, I got an apology from someone in the organization. Who said, "I'm so sorry. It was so disrespectful. She was there and she was doing this." And I'm like, no, please, do not apologize. And so we had this really heartwarming conversation where I'm like, if that's what she needed to do to engage, totally fine with that, right? So just this wonderful, to your point, don't miss, like, don't misunderstand. Let's let people be who they need to be in that moment. So this was years ago, a decade ago maybe. So let's fast forward to that was a moment where I think I got it right. Let's fast forward to a moment where I think I got it wrong, because I think we all have these moments where we're like, "Oh yay, I'm doing yay," and then we have these moments where we're like, "Oh dang it, I still have growing to do." And there was a moment where I was interacting with a human in a position where I was leading this person. A person was part of a working group, a part of a working team, and I needed them to. I wanted to be sure they heard me on my instruction. And what I did was I insisted in this particular moment, I insisted that they listen the way I would listen. And so I provided coaching. I said, don't do X. I need you to do Y. And as I paused in that moment, I'm like, I just did the thing. I just did the thing. I just made you listen the way I think listening ought to be in this moment, because it was really important, and we'd had a history of not connecting because we sometimes speak different languages, if you will. And I needed them to listen. And in my head, listening looks like this, right? And so I go back to where we started in this conversation, and I think we have these assumptions. You don't know what you don't know.
Yes.
And so I had this assumption that we had in this particular person's case, we hadn't yet reached successful listening. We hadn't at that moment, we hadn't yet arrived at what successful communication looked like. And so we still have these blind spots. And there's no good defense for my behavior, so I won't even try. But in this moment, I was doing out of my blind spot, I was doing, well, you got to do it my way because it's the only way I know. And I'm blind to what the other things might be. And so I just wonder, as someone who's supposed to even be good at communication, I share this as a bit of vulnerability that we're not, none of us are immune to it. None of us is immune to it. We all have these, we can get in our own way sometimes. And so I invite us to continue on that spectrum, continue on that learning journey of being willing to be open, being willing to invite the conversation. And I would have liked to have had the thought a few moments before I had it to say, wait, hang on. I'm not going to tell you how you need to listen, but instead create spaces where people can listen and they can learn and they can engage and they can work in a space that's best for them.
And I think a good question, and because I won't spend a lot of time on AI because I think there's so many conversations we had, and you had a very good conversation with someone a couple of weeks ago, I think, or a couple of months ago about AI, and how to use it to help organizations. Is that instead of being scared of AI, I think it's a very great opportunity to drill down as leaders. Are we doing the best that we can do? Because we don't know what we don't know. And I'm not saying replace the consultants like you or me, because you don't know what you don't know, so you don't even know what to ask. And AI, really, as much time as I spent with it and spent time with others, the best people who use it are the experts because they know what questions to ask and they know whether or not they're getting good information. So it's like you would never want to depend on something if you were completely brand new to a topic. It can be in like improving communication. I think it's good to still have that person in the loop because they're going to bring a level of experience, and if you don't know what you don't know, that's absolutely essential. And I want to say that first and foremost. But we know that most companies do not want to invest in the number of probably change management coaches that they should have,
Right.
or the leadership workshops. And budgets are tight right now. We don't know what's going to happen in the economy. So if you as a leader can get into something like Claude and create a tool for yourself that maybe focuses on 5 pillars of psychological safety, and you can take a coaching session that maybe you recorded virtually or audio wise and say, examine this transcript. What could I have done differently to help this person? Or to say, I have an employee who's very quiet. They accomplish what they do, but I'm not getting enough of their voice in the room. What can I do differently? Give me some exercises to help gain, my introvert clients. You and I would love to be with those people and to help walk them through it and create something. But, especially if you're the factory lead on the floor, or maybe you're someone who has to travel to a lot of places, you just may not have the resources or the time to work with someone like you or me. And I think we would all just want them to be better. We want these people to do better, to be better, to be better in their jobs. So if their leader can get some insight or get some good pointers to start and then get redirected, because I think good AI and good tools in AI will redirect you back to a human at the right point.
Yeah.
To get that higher level assistance, I think that can quickly allow us to think more outside the box of how do we open our environments and our leadership skills in ways we haven't thought about, because we're too busy to stop and breathe. And just stopping and breathing is a practice anyway. But now to stop, breathe, and give yourself 15, 20 minutes to think about how you're going to create more engagement between all communication types, how you can improve your metrics so that they are more result oriented versus measured around things that a person can't even control. And now they have to try and make them better. That doesn't make any sense. So I feel like AI is going to give us the ability to, yes, cut down on the things we hate doing, whether that's writing an email, or me, who I love to write, but I hate marketing stuff. It's like writing an application. Like I hated scholarship applications because don't make me talk about myself. I hate it. I'll spend way too much time. But if it can help me draft something that I can edit comfortably and save myself 6 hours, cool. Those types of things, excellent. Let's get rid of the painful stuff. And then let's also maybe try and get some ways to think about how we're leading our team that we never thought about. Ideally with someone such as you, ideally who can first even tell that person, this is what you don't know. This
Yeah.
is how you should think about it. This is how you have good questions. And someone like you who, when we talked and last fall, I said, like, as I've dug into AI, someone like you is perfect for this. And me, because,
Right.
I've done continuous improvement for a long time. Change management is my newer tool. I'd say I've been using it for about 4 years,
Okay.
but it just makes sense.
Mhm.
And that we help lead this application of using great tech in human focused ways to make job work, better. It doesn't have to be, life changing better, but it can be if you just go to your job and you feel good that I accomplished something, that in itself, to go home every day knowing I did something well and I'm proud of what I did, um, touches everybody in your life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if we were to put a bow on our conversation today, Jenna, how would you want to wrap this up?
I would say leaders don't focus on whether or not someone is neurodivergent, just focus on having clear expectations and really asking yourself, can I do more?
Mm,
Can I be making my expectations and priorities more clear so everyone, no matter what their learning or communication type,
mhm,
can feel confident about the work that they do?
mhm,
And then for the professionals who are neurodivergent themselves, or maybe they suspect, I would say you are not a problem to be fixed. We all have skills we can improve upon, but you're not a problem. And to really, without judging yourself, identify what makes you work well and
mm,
finding ways to bring that to a job. And not every job it's going to be possible, but bringing that to your workplace so you can do your best and perform at your best. And
mm,
instead of squeezing yourself and exhausting yourself into a way of working that doesn't make sense.
mm. That's so lovely. So Jenna, if obviously if our listeners want to find you, they can reach out to us, and we will happily connect them with you. How about if they wanted to reach out to you directly? What's the best way for them to find you?
I am on LinkedIn, Jenna Adams Valadez, but I know it's a mouthful. But I can also be found on theleaneye.com. It's just a website, no www. Or I'm also a co-founder for AI Demo and Learn, which is just AI Demo Learn, all one word. Um, .com, so that if you are thinking about how to use AI, especially more human centric, and just even understand what it means for you, because I think there are a lot of people who just want to do a good job and they need to understand what this technology can use for them in a real way. Like, we are a free community to help each other learn and grow together to keep up with how fast things are going.
Fantastic. Thank you. And this would not be the Even Better podcast if I didn't ask my trademark question. What's making you even better these days, Jenna?
Oh, that's so easy, my daughter. So I became a mom later in life, and she's turning 4 this month. And just the way to think about how I do things in a new way through such fresh little eyes in the world of fresh little eyes, and to help her be the best that she can be, has turned that kindness also towards myself. Like,
Mm,
how can I be kinder and more supportive for my needs and how I work? Um, like I would want my daughter to do for herself. I started to re-examine my life and how I treat myself, and how would I want my daughter to speak to herself as well, that internal monologue. And because I want to be that example.
oh, I love this. Oh, I love this. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Well, Jenna, thank you so much for your time today. It has been a joy to spend this time with you, and thank you for your insights. I'm so grateful.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing, letting me share my story. And I hope people will take this conversation not as an attack or to stress about what you've done wrong, or maybe it's not about wrong. It's just like, how do we, like you said, get better? There's these great opportunities to get better pretty easily, fairly quickly, and to rejoice in that win of, now I know, so I can do better.
I love it. I love it. I'm so glad you're here. And to our listeners, thank you so much for joining in. And on behalf of all of us here at Your Clear Next Step, we hope the rest of your day is even better.
Thank you for tuning in today. The Even Better podcast will be back with more content soon. But in the meantime, subscribe to our podcast or check out our website at yourclearnextstep.com for more information. See you next episode.